quickly chat about flipping. Now, I'm not going to talk about pitching a jig, a traditional skirted jig. I'm going to talk about using a hook and a plastic. It's been a way I've caught a lot of fish over the years. Some people have asked many times, how are you doing it? What are you using? What's the terminal tackle? What's the rod setup? So I'm going to quickly break down how I flip with a worm or with a plastic and a hook and a weight. I'm going to show you how this setup works. For starters, let's talk rod and reel. You know, I went and had a custom rod built to Thorne Brothers. This is going to be a 7'6" heavy action rod. I want a beefy rod because I want to horse these fish out of cover. A lot of times I'm flipping jungle-ish type stuff, heavy weeds, heavy milfoil, lily pads, whatever it might be. So I want a rod that can really oomph and pull them out. Then I'm using a mainline braid. I'm using a 50 to 65 pound test braided line. You might say that's pretty heavy. Well, I'll tell you what, you're gonna want that when you gotta horse these things out. You're gonna want that rope type feel. And you can certainly, like I'm doing on this setup, do a fluorocarbon leader. So I'm flipping around some fairly clear water today. So I put on a 20-pound fluorocarbon leader. So I still got a lot of power, a lot of oomph behind this. If you're fishing dirty water, stained water, river systems, honestly, I've had just as good success tying direct to the braid with your hook. So that's gonna be my receiving setup. I'm fishing a Shimano Bantam reel. Make sure you have a solid, strong star drag system on there because again, you're gonna horse these things out. And for me, I'm using a bait casting setup. That's gonna be what I got here from Rod Reel Line. Now on the receiving end of this, there's so many different types of flipping hooks. And I'm not gonna say one is extremely better than the other. Everyone has their personal preference. But if you go to any retail store, stop into Thorne Brothers or anybody around and ask them about some flipping hooks, they're gonna show you a variety of different types. So I happen to have one here that's fairly simple. It's a straight shanked hook. It's not a worm or a bend hook, straight shanked hook, and I'll show you why. Super thick gauge. I'm gonna have a hard time bending this. And again, you're fishing in the jungle, you're fishing in the thick of it, and you want everything to be more stout, more powerful, more sturdy, more durable. That's why you want to look at something like this. And then I go on and put my desired weight. So the first thing you do before you do any of this is I take this little bobber stop. Probably can't see it on the camera, but there's a little rubber bobber stop. I slide that on the line first. Then I take my desired bullet weight, slide it on second, point it up. Then I tie my favorite hook on there. And what it does with this bobber stop, I'm eventually going to want to slide this down and I'm going to hold that weight in place. And I'll show you why. Then I take my favorite plastic. Happen to be using a Flippin' Out from Mr. Twister. There's a ton of different things you can fish. Beaver baits, creature baits, tubes. There's a lot of ways you can fish with this, but for the sake of the video and time, I'm not going to show you how to rig 75 different things. I'm just going to show you on this lure. So here you go. Got my straight shank hooked. It's got a little plastic keeper on there, which is nice to have. A lot of brands will have that to hold your plastic in place. I'm going to put this on, just nip hook it. Again, I'm trying to focus on this being a weedless approach. So I'm just going to nip hook that on there. We've probably all done this a million times with different things. Nice thing about that plastics keeper is now that's on there good. Now I'm going to push this back through. Many of you know how to rig a weedless plastic. Poke that tip in there. Now see, now I got that weight holding in place with that bobber stop. Now I can flip this into heavy cover. I'm gonna flip, I'm gonna give it a few shakes, I'm gonna feel for everything I possibly can. Hook sets are free, I'm gonna bring it home. So now this presentation right here, this application, this flipping jig, hook, bullet weight can be used in a variety of situations, shallow to mid-depth ranges, some of the most gnarliest cover, and it's amazing what you pull out of the jungle when you're chasing bass, flipping.